Senator Coons, thank you so much for being with us. Let's start with the elections in Kenya, where you are. Several African leaders have already called President-elect William Ruto to congratulate him. Has U.S. President Joe Biden done the same? If not, why not?
Zain, I don't know whether President Biden has reached out yet, but I do know that the bipartisan delegation of members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans from the House and Senate that I am leading on a trip to 5 African countries, had the opportunity to meet earlier today with President Uhuru Kenyatta, with Deputy President Ruto, and with former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. We had frank conversations about the importance of a safe and reasonable and fair transition here. We humbly offered that the United States could use the example of a peaceful transfer of power from another democracy.
And just to clarify, when you met with William Ruto, that was in his capacity as Deputy President, not in his capacity as President-elect, correct?
Correct. We were meeting with him as the Deputy President, but we were, of course, discussing the outcome of the election and his vision for the path forward for U.S.-Kenya relations.
As you know, there's a lot of disputes happening right now on the ground there about this particular election. President William Ruto, was declared the winner earlier this week. Raila Odinga intends, it looks like, to dispute that with the Kenyan Supreme Court. What was the U.S.'s delegation's view of the integrity of this election?
Well, broadly speaking, international observers from many countries, as well as Kenyan civil society leaders, recognized this as a free and fair election that was transparent and well conducted. There is a controversy about how the Election Commission ultimately announced its results, and it is our understanding, as you just reported, that the former Prime Minister and his team intends to file an appeal in the Supreme Court. We complimented Deputy President Ruto on his recent public remarks, saying that he, if confirmed as the President-elect, intends to be a president for all Kenyans. We also expressed appreciation to Raila Odinga, the former Prime Minister, for his calling on his supporters to remain calm and peaceful.
Let's talk about violence in the Sahel, because France just announced that all troops have actually left Mali after 9 years. France's sort of 9-year stint in the Sahel region hasn't exactly gone as it had hoped. What sort of vacuum does that create now that France has left? And how will the U.S. step in to contribute to stability in that part of the continent?
Well, the United States has long provided support to a number of our critical security partners in the Sahel. We've provided airlift and intelligence and some logistical and materiel support, both for France's Operation Barkhane and for operations by a number of key Sahelian nations. I do think that this is a vacuum that's being filled by the Wagner Group, by a Russian mercenary organization that has a very poor record in a number of countries, including Mozambique, of conducting operations that are not governed in any way by human rights concerns and that tend to be aggressive, extractive, even brutal at times. And so the challenge in Mali, certainly after the coup, is to help find a path forward where the Malian people have a voice again in a democratic government, and where there is a path for security and development that doesn't rely on foreign mercenaries.
Let's talk about climate change, because in the US and Europe, we're talking about record-breaking heat, we're talking about rivers drying up, we're talking about wildfires in Antarctica, glaciers melting. You're on the ground there in Africa right now. What does the fight to protect the environment look like in Africa right now? What are the threats? And what is the US's role as the world's second largest polluter in assisting Africa in dealing with the devastating effects of climate change?
Well, climate change is increasing in its intensity, and it's leading to all sorts of strange alterations in our climate. There are more people in Africa more vulnerable to climate change than in any continent on Earth. And we're already seeing the ways in which several years of failed rains have led to widespread hunger and malnutrition. There's an expansion of deserts in a number of regions, but particularly in the Sahel. And there's pressure caused by things like Lake Chad shrinking dramatically in recent years that then creates instability and insecurity. The United States has an obligation to reduce our own emissions, but we also have a role here on the ground, working in partnership with the people of Africa to help provide access to renewable energy. Here in Kenya, the overwhelming majority of power is actually renewable. They have significant solar and geothermal resources and have demonstrated how it's possible to be an advancing, developing country with a robust economy, yet rely very heavily on renewable energy.
Finally, Senator, I do want to touch on Ethiopia because I know obviously you've spent some time there in the past. The WHO is calling the Tigray crisis the worst humanitarian man-made disaster on earth. We know that the Ethiopian government has announced that it's seeking to conclude peace talks. It's looking for a ceasefire with Tigrayan officials. Do you have high hopes at all that a resolution to this conflict that started in November 2020 is finally in sight?
I hope and pray that it is. This has been a brutal conflict with human rights violations committed by all sides, by the ENDF, the TPLF, the Eritrean forces, the Amhara militia. There have been savage instances of human rights abuses and the cutting off of humanitarian relief, the denial of access for food relief and for medical services into Tigray now for well over a year. Finally, there has been some relief recently. Finally, there has been some progress where both the TPLF and the government of Ethiopia have indicated a willingness to come to the table and to talk. There has to be accountability for the conduct of some of the armed forces in this conflict and some of the militia, some of the irregular forces, but there first has to be a path forward towards peace and towards the provision of humanitarian relief for so many people who are suffering across many of the regions of Ethiopia.
All right, Senator Coons, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Zain. Great being on with you.